Captain America. The black one. This video is about the black one.
My man.
Obviously, you know all about Steve Rogers as Captain America.
I am Steve Rogers.
But how much do you really know about Sam Wilson other than the MCU giving him a terrible beard? In the comics, Sam Wilson, he is the man. In the comics, Sam Wilson is the dude who saved America when it turned out that Steve Rogers, Captain America, was a secret Nazi Hydra agent who overthrew the government and turned the USA into a right-wing nation. Wait, are we still talking about fiction here? Yeah, seriously. Steve Rogers, Captain America, turned Captain Nazi and took over, and it was Sam Wilson who took up the shield and saved the USA. But even before that, Sam Wilson was already the protector of Harlem, the hero who stands up for America's minorities, those left by the side of the road. It was friendly neighborhood Sam who stepped up to gang violence, to exploitative landlords, to pimps, to child abusers, and all this heroism was instilled in young Sam by his father, Paul Wilson, a minister back in the 70s. During a time when Harlem was a ghetto, Wilson Sr. made it his mission to get kids off of the streets, to help mothers in need, to talk gangs out of killing each other. So then the gangs killed him instead. Yeah, Papa Wilson got shot, but with Papa Wilson dead, Sam's mother picked up the slack. Mrs. Wilson never sought vengeance, but instead turned the other cheek, for she understood that these gangs are just a product of their environment, and if she can just change that environment... Yeah, she got shot too. Sam Wilson became an orphan.
Okay.
Except he was not a billionaire orphan boy, he was a kid from and in the hood. So Sam Wilson, barely a teenager, now had to raise himself and his two younger siblings. He took up a job driving a rig, put himself through college, and became a respected social worker in the streets of Harlem. And when he wasn't doing that, he raised pigeons. In fact, Sam got so into birds that he traveled to Brazil to buy a fancy hunting falcon that he called Red Wing, and then went to train falconry on the Caribbean exile island. Now, unlike Sam Wilson, you and I might first ask ourselves, why is this place called Exile Island, bro?
That's suspicious.
The answer? It's a Caribbean island that had been taken over by the former followers of Uber-Nazi Red Skull, and these former followers went into exile after losing the Second World War and went into exile on Exile Island. And you know what they say, you can take the Nazi out of the Second World War, but you cannot take the Second World War out of the Nazi. These guys overthrew the natives of the island like it was America in the 17th century, and before long, they oppressed the entire nation, and Exile Island was born. Enter Sam Wilson, who was just trying to train his new Falcon Red Wing, but accidentally found himself in the middle of a civil war, But Sam Wilson was still a social worker at heart, and it turns out that when you put a social worker into a civil war, there's a very fine line between social worker and freedom fighter. Sam Wilson started supporting the natives in their battle against the Nazis, and since there can be no Nazi party without guest of honor Captain America, the captain also showed up on the island, and after a bit of
Real recognize real and you looking familiar.
him and Sam Wilson teamed up, and Captain America trained him in the arts of beating up Nazis. Cue good old-fashioned training montage between the two. And once Sam was ready, Captain America initiated him by giving him a license to wear his underwear over his tights, and a new hero was born. And because it all started with his love for pigeons, Sam Wilson henceforth called himself. But then he realized that that sounds stupid, so he went for the Falcon instead. A new super duo was born. Together, the Falcon and Captain America made quick work of the Nazis, and since couples that kill Nazis together stay together, they remained bros ever since. After their honeymoon on Exile Island came to an end, Captain America and Sam Wilson they parted ways for a while because now, as the Falcon, Sam Wilson still had Harlem to protect, which he did day in and day out, literally, taking down gangs, drug dealers, and villains as the Falcon by night, and exposing those who would exploit the unprivileged and help families as the social worker Sam Wilson by day. Both Sam Wilson and his alter ego became Harlem icons, and on some serious Martin Luther King things, Sam Wilson committed all his power to helping those without any power. But of course, for every MLK, there has to be a Malcolm X, since soon enough, a black extremist militia emerged in Harlem, the People's Militia, who fought for black rights by any means necessary. They targeted political leaders with extreme violence, and it was up to the Falcon to stop them, which was difficult because many black people and other minorities saw the People's Militia as saviors, and they see the Falcon going against them. Why was the Falcon protecting the very politicians who had no problems climbing over black and minority corpses on their way to profit? Not a good look for the Falcon. Many considered him a sellout, and he lost a lot of love on the streets of Harlem, but a true hero is not in it for the recognition. The Falcon still knew that he was the hero Harlem both needs and deserves, so he remained Harlem's winged guardian angel, whether they wanted him to be or not.
Because that's what heroes do.
While the Falcon was mostly fighting street-level crime, he kept helping out Captain America over the years from time to time. They took down Red Skull a bunch of times, which that always pisses me off when super dangerous, mass-murdering villains just get a whooping and get sent to jail. You know they're gonna break out. You know they're gonna keep killing. So just, at some point you gotta... But anyway, they beat up Red Skull a bunch of times, and Falcon was also wingman for Captain America whenever he had some Bucky blues and tried to get Bucky back. They went on quests with the Avengers, the usual hero stuff. The Falcon, internationally speaking, or nationally speaking, he was also moving up in the ranks. And on one of those quests to give the Red Skull a stern talking to, the Uber-Nazi got his hands on an ancient artifact called the Cosmic Cube. Basically a magic item that can control matter and energy, alter reality, and grant its user any wish it desires. Think Aladdin's lamp on steroids, super OP. And with the Cosmic Cube, the Red Skull could manipulate time and space, so when the Falcon and Captain America came to stop the Red Skull's latest Nazi takeover plan, the Red Skull used the cube's power to transport them to his evil castle in Berchtesgaden, which is actually a beautiful place in real life.
Etwas Ruhe vielleicht. Ich bin müde vom Wandern.
I'm not kidding, you should visit Berchtesgaden, it's really pretty. Anyway, in the Marvel Universe, Red Skull has his castle there, so he transports them there, traps them, imprisons them, and then the Red Skull used the cube's reality-changing abilities to torture Sam Wilson by messing with his mind and changing Sam's past. He made Sam Wilson think that he was once a criminal, drug-dealing gangster who terrorized Los Angeles under the name of Snap Wilson. Yeah, Snap Wilson. Sounds exactly like a Nazi trying to come up with a black gangster persona. But hey, no matter. The cube's powers, they were so strong that the Red Skull successfully made Sam Wilson and Captain America and everybody believe that Sam Wilson was once a dangerous LA drug dealer named Snap. The Red Skull made it a false reality. And ever since that moment, it was so.
It is known.
It is known.
In fact, the Falcon fell so deep under the Red Skull's gangster spell that he fully bought into the Snap Wilson persona and turned full G on Captain America, trying to kill him.
I was gonna rip his heart out. I'm the best ever.
But of course, good old Captain managed to snap Sam out of it. Snap him out of it. And now reunited, Captain America and Sam Wilson defeated Red Skull. They defeated the Red Skull. But still, the damage was done. Snap Wilson was now a real past, as if it had always been so. So obviously, in the minds of the government, that was a problem, and they scheduled a trial for Sam "Snap" Wilson to pay for his past crimes. Luckily, Nick Fury was able to pull some strings to avoid sentencing, but that didn't help Sam Wilson to avoid having a mental breakdown. Sam didn't know who he was anymore and fell into depression. He stopped protecting Harlem as the Falcon, for he felt like he didn't deserve to call himself a hero. And then, to make things worse, his nephew got shot in a robbery that maybe, just maybe, the Falcon would have been able to prevent. And then there's nothing like that good old what-if guilt. So Sam's depression worsened. But still, he managed to put on some superhero tights, wear his underwear on top like Captain America taught him, and then walk the streets of Harlem, but really without any conviction. This wasn't the Falcon. This was just a masked man wandering the streets. And remember, ever since he opposed the People's Militia and saved some politicians, the streets weren't so welcoming of their friendly neighborhood Falcon anymore. And some very unfriendly gangbangers jumped the Falcon and beat him up. Probably would have killed him, if not for some tough street kid named Raymond Curtis, who admired the Falcon and happened to stop by, chased the gangsters away, and saved his hero. Now, I've never been a superhero, but I'd imagine that when you're doubting your impact and resolve, there's nothing like a kid that admires you saving your life. And seeing this kid's courage in action, the Falcon found his inspiration again, and back to hero business as usual it was. Until he found out that the kid who saved him, Raymond Curtis, was a drug addict who robbed a store to get high and shot and killed Sam's nephew.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Yeah, rock meet bottom. Sam Wilson was at his lowest point. He couldn't fight anymore. He was ready to give up. But then the impossible happened. Captain America died. Well, he didn't die. He just aged to his natural age of about 90, which is basically a living dead person. No offense. While fighting a supervillain who went by the name of Iron Nail. Yes, seriously. Captain America had a super serum neutralized, and without its effect, Steve Rogers aged to be over 90 to his natural age, and was no longer fit to carry the shield of Captain America. I mean, dude, 90 years old, he couldn't even lift it. So Steve Rogers then accepted a leading thinking position as an old head at S.H.I.E.L.D. And he knew no one more fit to take on the mantle of the captain than Sam Wilson. And that call of duty, it got Sam out of his depression. The faith that Steve Rogers had in him, despite his past as Snap Wilson, it meant the world to Sam. And so he accepted this honor, and from this day forward, Sam Wilson became... Once he took on the iconic shield, Sam Wilson was immediately assigned Captain America tasks, which meant no more patrolling the streets of Harlem. Now, Sam Wilson's day-to-day were matters of national security, saving America, saving the world. For example, from Red Skull and Hydra's latest Nazi takeover attempts, or stopping a supervillain with nuke powers threatening to blow up the world, or stopping a super scientist who, was threatening to blow up the world, or even the occasional alien invasion, fighting the Chitauri alongside Iron Man so they don't enslave the world and also don't blow it up. That meant that Sam Wilson now also became one of the Avengers and even led them at times, as was the duty of Captain America in the past. Of course, before long, Sam was also faced with the government corruption that so far hadn't been on his radar. And one of these cases was when S.H.I.E.L.D. got its hand on the Cosmic Cube. Remember the Aladdin's lamp on steroids that Red Skull once used to create Snap Wilson? Yeah, S.H.I.E.L.D. got their hands on it, and they used its power to change reality on a grand scale. S.H.I.E.L.D. created Pleasant Hill, an affluent, peaceful suburban town of law-abiding citizens that contribute to society, but in reality, all those citizens were high-level, violent criminals whose minds and appearances had been altered using the Cosmic Cube. Pleasant Hill was actually a top-secret prison, but the Cosmic Cube made its reality a top-notch suburb. Needless to say, in terms of human rights, big no-no. Also, it turned out that the Cosmic Cube had started developing a conscience of its own, which manifested into a being called Kobik. Think of it like the genie from Aladdin's bottle being freed and becoming independent. That's Kobik. And Kobik was working with S.H.I.E.L.D. on Project Pleasant Hill. And like with most well-intended mass abuses of human rights, it didn't end well. Surprise, surprise. Kobik and S.H.I.E.L.D. lost their mind control over the inmates. And once the inmates regained their memories, they weren't too happy. Couple that anger with the fact that they're actually all super violent criminals with some of them superpowers, and the ensuing riots, they were pretty intense. Enter our new Captain America, who teamed up with now old man S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Steve Rogers to clean up the mess. But they were losing. They were losing the battle against the masses of angry inmates. So Kobik used its powers to restore Steve Rogers' super steroids. The old man went reverse Benjamin Button and then clapped inmate cheeks alongside Sam Wilson until they got the situation in Pleasant Hill under control. That's that story. Important thing is that, needless to say, all of that, mind-controlling inmates in some make-believe suburb, huge national scandal. And somehow, Sam Wilson, the all-new Captain America, who kind of just saved everybody, he was blamed for it. The moment this black guy puts on the costume, something like this happens? Of course. What do you expect from this new Captain America who used to be a drug dealer, Snap Wilson? Because, mind you, as far as everybody is concerned, the Snap Wilson drug dealer past that Red Skull created for Sam with the Cosmic Cube was a reality. Sam Wilson could never live down his past, and his involvement in this Pleasant Hill scandal, it completely tanked his Captain America approval ratings. The people needed a scapegoat for this colossal Pleasant Hill scandal, and this new black Captain America was that scapegoat. The masses demanded that Sam Wilson steps down as Captain America, and eventually these voices got so loud that it became a whole political movement, a rallying cry for Republicans, and no one shouted it louder than the hyper-conservative Senator Harold, who used all this controversy as a platform and invoked a new initiative to protect Americans from crime, the private policing program called AmeriCops. Police robots that perform surveillance in underdeveloped neighborhoods, and by performing surveillance in underdeveloped neighborhoods, I mean they beat up blacks, Hispanics, and other minorities for whatever petty crime they see fit or make up out of thin air. The AmeriCops were a hyper-conservative, glorified shooting squad masquerading as robot cops. And unsurprisingly, the deaths of innocent people that followed sparked a counter-movement, and soon enough, the country was torn in two. A race war took hold of America, and all too fittingly, there are currently two Captain Americas, seemingly one for either side, a white Captain America and a black Captain America. Not that Steve Rogers had any love for these racist crimes, he stood for all Americans, all of humanity, but even he was drowned out by the noise of this race war, while Sam Wilson, who obviously was very vocal against these AmeriCops, Sam Wilson became the figurehead of the resistance. Not that he wanted to, he just did. He couldn't help it. Which to the conservative government made Sam Wilson the leader of the resistance, the perfect target and the man to blame once the resistance inevitably grows louder and some of them grow more extreme and violent. While most protested the AmeriCops initiative in a civil manner, some decided to fight fire with fire and planned a terrorist attack to kill Senator Harold. Once Sam Wilson and Steve Rogers got wind of the attack, the two Captain Americas did everything in their power to save the radical senator's life, which put Sam Wilson at serious odds with large parts of black America. Sam had been here before, trying to do the right thing and saving a life, but seemingly doing the wrong thing by saving a politician's life. And so he lost the support of those who had been suffering at the hands of the person Sam was trying to save. But still, heroes save lives. That is what they do, and that's what Sam Wilson was going to do. But despite the best efforts of two Captain Americas, Senator Harold was killed, which, very ironically, also put Sam Wilson at odds with conservative America now, because even though he tried to save the senator, they now blamed him for his death, since he was kind of the figurehead of the movement in their eyes. A lose-lose situation. Sam Wilson was branded a terrorist by the conservatives and a traitor by the resistance. So stuck between a rock and a hard place, Sam Wilson decided to just leave it all behind. He gave up the shield, gave up the title of Captain America, he gave up the Falcon identity, he gave up all the heroics and just left civilization behind. Sam Wilson moved into the mountains where he lived alone with his birds, and that is where he stayed long enough until his name was just a distant memory in the short memory of urban America. During Sam's absence, it turned out that all of this, the AmeriCops dividing all of the USA, making Sam Wilson lose support from all sides and forcing him into exile, all of it was planned by none other than Captain America, by Steve Rogers himself. For he was not who he pretended to be. In reality, Steve Rogers was a secret Hydra agent. Actually, scratch that. Steve Rogers was the secret Hydra agent, a massive Nazi, and he had been all along, just biding his time to take over the world and install a fascist regime. At least that is what the Cosmic Cube made him believe, because enter massive plot twist. Steve Rogers' reality was also changed by the Cosmic Cube. But let me explain. All along, the Cosmic Cube was acting on the Red Skull's wet Nazi dreams, meaning when it manifested into Kobik, it was still doing the Red Skull's bidding. Pleasant Hill was just the cube playing nice with S.H.I.E.L.D. until it can take over the suburb to become ground zero for the Red Skull's vision of a world-dominating fascist regime. But when Pleasant Hill failed, the cube did a quick pivot, and now the cube, still under the influence of Red Skull and in the form of Kobik, restored Steve Rogers' power, only to take control of his mind, so that he is basically Red Skull 2.0, aka Steve Rogers was now. Yeah, this is such a comic book storyline, but I love it. So here we are. The whole AmeriCops sting, mind control, Steve Rogers was behind it, and with the black Captain America out of the way and the Kobik's cosmic cube energy giving Steve Rogers next level superpowers, Captain Nazi staged a bloody coup to take over the country and take down all those who would stand in his way, including the Avengers, S.H.I.E.L.D., and anybody else who crosses his path. And while all this was going down, Sam Wilson was just chilling with his birds somewhere in the middle of nowhere with no clue what was going on. So when he eventually returned to civilization as he knew it was gone. America was now under the control of the fascist Hydra regime and their new leader, Captain Nazi. Note that this is not actually his name, I just call him that. And the Avengers? They were defeated in the war, and what little was left of them was known as a resistance movement called the Underground. But Sam Wilson, he didn't care about any of that. He was done with the country that had made it very clear that it was done with him. He left the fighting to the remaining Avengers, to the Underground, and he was happy to just live out his days under the Hydra regime, for to him all these regimes were the same. So even when Black Widow, the former Avenger who was now a leading member of the Underground, even when Black Widow came to recruit Sam Wilson to the cause and appealed to the hero in him, Sam rejected her and sent her away, meaning that when Black Widow then, in desperation, eventually saw no other choice but to take matters into her own hands and assassinate Steve Rogers, Sam Wilson was not there to save her when Steve Rogers killed Black Widow. Once again, Sam felt directly responsible for the death of a good person. But what could have been the final nail in the coffin of the resistance turned out to be the spark that Sam Wilson needed. He couldn't give up like this. Not on America, not on Steve Rogers, nah. So he put on the mask, picked up the shield, and became Captain America yet again. And with their iconic hero leading the charge, America was inspired. Anybody that still had some fight left in them came out of the woodworks and followed Captain America into the battle for America. Sam Wilson led the charge against Steve Rogers and Hydra, and at the end of this bloody climax to the Civil War, it was Sam Wilson who got his hands on a shard of the Cosmic Cube, and with its power, he neutralized Kobik, reversed its effect on Steve Rogers, reversed its effect on the Sam Wilson lie that had been implanted in his mind, and with everything back in order, Steve Rogers joined the good side, and together they took down Hydra and ended its fascist reign. After the war was over, America took a while to be whole again, as did Steve Rogers. Everything that had happened had left him in pieces, and Sam knew all too well what that felt like. Now that Sam Wilson had saved America from Hydra, had proven that he was a worthy Captain America, now that the people had accepted him and forgotten his dark past that now never really existed because it was reversed, so they really forgot it, not that they forgave it. Now that he had accomplished all of that, he was done with the shield for good. He knew that the shield of Captain America only belonged to Steve Rogers, and he knew that America needed him to carry the shield as much as Steve needed to. Sam Wilson left the life of Captain America behind and left Steve Rogers to find his purpose behind the shield again. Sam returned to being the Falcon, returned to Harlem, where he decided to, from now on, dedicate his life to fight for those that have no one else to fight for them, the ones forgotten and living in the shadow of America's supposed greatness. But this is still comic books, and especially with Marvel and DC. More is always better. They never find an ending to any story, and they always have to take things to the extreme. I cut out a lot of stuff to narrow it down to an actual human storyline for Sam Wilson. But in the comics, there's a lot of exaggerated time travel stuff and other dimensions and constant changing of identities. Like at some point in the comics, Sam Wilson even becomes a werewolf. Seriously, it's too much, and there's no end to it. I think Sam Wilson actually becomes Captain America 2 more times and gives it up 2 more times. It's ridiculous. So that's why I chose to give you the narrative I did. Everything I told you is from the comics. I didn't invent anything. I just tried to hopefully simplify and streamline it to show you what I think is the essence of the man Sam Wilson, who became Captain America when his country needed him the most.